So in the West End of London, you're never more than 300 metres away from one of them. What are we talking about? Addison Lee's cars. John Griffin has built the company up from scratch to a revenue exceeding 170 million. One of the greatest success stories here in the UK. And John Griffin, the chairman of Addison Lee, welcome, sir.
Nice to be here.
Excellent. John, if we can start with what I call the quickfire round, where we get to know a little bit more about our guests. Just sort of, quick. Just a few questions. Number one, you spend supposedly, reportedly, over £1,500 on restaurants each week. So have you got a favourite restaurant? And
Yeah, I alternate. I mean, I don't go to the same restaurants all the time. I treat myself to some of the better ones, but there are some ordinary restaurants that are not very pricey, which I enjoy going to. Yeah. I quite enjoy my wines, so generally speaking, kind of it gets a bit heavy at that end of the bill. Yeah. But overall, I don't gamble, I don't have a helicopter or a boat. I play golf and I like my food. That's really my indulgences. So I feel that it's not too extravagant in the overall terms.
Absolutely not, no. So is that one meal a week out, or is it?
Oh no, it's every night. I eat it every night.
Yeah. Why not?
I don't like cooking. I don't like the smells. I don't like the shopping. I don't like the preparation, the washing up. I don't like the stress that women are under because I'm late or the meal's not right. It's just not for me. I've never been a fan of all that. I've never been on time, which doesn't help. So overall, I found a solution. No cooking, and let's go out and eat. Let other people do the cooking for us, and let's leave the washing up behind. Yeah, so that suits me.
I think a lot of our viewers will be nodding their heads in agreement with you, delegating what we don't enjoy and enjoying the experience.
Yeah, it's not everybody that likes cooking. People assume that they go home and the wife presents the dinner, but a lot of wives don't want to do that, and it's just a chore for them, and they get bogged down in shopping and preparation, and they just don't need it. And I sympathise with those women, and I would like to think that they should join me down these restaurants, because it's the best way to go. And it's a lot cheaper than you think. I'm not saying I go to the cheap restaurants, but overall, the wastage of food and all the preparation and the heat and light and gas, and when you add it all up, you think to yourself, you know what, it's cheaper to go out and eat.
Yeah, absolutely. The amount of wasted food I do. And I suppose it's one of those mantras as well. You've got to follow what you love to do, so there's nothing wrong. Nothing wrong with that. When you don't drive in an Addison Lee car, do you have a driver? What car do you drive?
I've got a Bentley, the Continental. I did have a soft top, but I've changed it now for the new one, which I've had a hard top. I didn't enjoy or ever have the soft top down. I don't know why people buy them. But if it's too, it can either be too hot, too cold, too wet, too noisy. So for me, I put the aircon on, play the radio, and I've got my hands free, so I can set my calls. So I thought, you know what, let's forget the soft top. Yeah. So that's what I've got.
Cool. What do you say is the biggest lesson from? Obviously, you were on Channel 4 was The Secret Millionaire. Any lessons there or observation?
Well, I was brought up in a basement in Kilburn, and I didn't have a silver spoon. And to be honest with you, I found the accommodation they gave me very acceptable. And for them, it was a kind of a run-down place. For me, I didn't see too much wrong with it, to be honest. I thought the people were lovely. I didn't see, there was nothing there that fazed me. There were gangs on the corner. I introduced myself. I said hello. I paid them respect. They appreciated that. They were my friends. It's just that there's an assumption these people are looking for trouble. They're just looking. And just if you walk up to them and say, how are you? Pleased to meet you. Everything's cool. And I had a good time out there. And it's just another place, really. It's a little bit, we were parts of Newcastle where times are a bit more difficult than others. But essentially, there's lots of that in every city in Britain. And I was in one of them. But I was, as far as the community were concerned, they weren't depressed about it. The programme makers were, but the people themselves, they seemed quite relaxed about the whole thing.
It's interesting you say that, because how you talk about sort of giving respect to even the gang members and things. I mean, it says in your website, in our research, it says, what's the secret of Addison Lee's success? And you say it's also, make sure you have respect for drivers. And I think it seems that that's just, a good mantra for anyone.
Historically, the trade has treated drivers badly. He's just a minicab driver. This man was the lowest of the low. And the problem I have with that is that I was a minicab driver and I worked really hard. If I had a 2-hour lunch, I didn't get paid. If I had a day off, I didn't get paid. So every time I got paid, it's because I carried out a journey. I actually did something. That's highly respectable, and I feel that the people who carry out that work are decent people. So that was my starting point, and I always appreciate the driver, and I bring him into the office occasionally. Drivers, I introduce him to the office as their boss. This is the man that you work for, not me, him. Without him, I go home, you go home, and they like that. It's a new way of handling it, because they're used to being told to wait outside and and treated like a second-class citizen. So I don't do that, and I genuinely feel they're fine. So that rubs off, and I have a lot of support from them, and I need them to support me. I can't do it my own. If they're out in the street running me down and running the company down, it's not good. But when they say I'm happy with the company, they look after me, they're good people, that builds the business. That's one of the little fractions that make up a successful business. It's not about that, it's about that, loads of them. And that's one of them. So I like to think that we work at that, we do work at that, and we have a good training now with the driver, and we give him a bit of self-esteem. He now works for Addison Lee. He's not a minicab driver, he works for Addison Lee. And we encourage him to look the part, to be the part, and to exercise his knowledge, to take extra lessons, to get MVQs, just to make him feel good about himself. And once he feels good about himself, that will come across in the way he talks to passengers and deals with the booking. And all of that builds another little fractional advantage on others that don't do that. So we do work hard at that, and it is an important thing. We take the whole thing seriously. I mean, Britain, it has a reputation for very poor services. You go to America, they blow you away with service. In Britain, it's not our thing. It's just something that these foreigners do. But the truth of the matter is, it's now a very important ingredient in building any business. You've got to have your service right. You've got to care. I have a thing in my wall, in my office, and I say, who cares wins. Because and I say to some of the staff, it has happened, I say, the problem with that booking? You didn't care. If that was your mum or your son, you'd have seen to that booking that the car would have got there. But you didn't care. And people who don't care are losers. And don't be a loser. That's what I feel. And in the industry, I mean, taxi industries throughout the world are rubbish. They are rubbish. People say to me, one particular person asked me the secret of my success, a competitor. And my answer to him was, you're my secret, because you're just no good at the job. And I do often say that in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. And I wasn't great, but I had one eye, and that was enough. So all the other companies fell by the wayside, and we just ran through the lot of them. And it was a very simple thing to do. It was just caring about what we were doing and providing a good service. And that's where we are today.
But John, what you're saying there about sort of making sure that you really respect your drivers. And I think a lot of organisations and the CEOs, they sort of think their front line is just another cost centre, whereas it seems like you genuinely recognise that that's the interface with your customer. If they're happy, then ultimately your customers are going to be happy because they have a great service, as you were saying, with the drivers.
I have 5 floors in the building, right? I sit right in amongst all the telephonists. That's where my desk is. I know what's going on. Only yesterday, I overheard a conversation that one of the telephonists had with a client, and I asked her to explain to me what had just taken place, and as a result of that, I made some changes. I realised that what she was explaining to the customer was not the right way it should be. So I decided that we're going to make some changes to overcome that. Now, because I'm in there, in the mix, I do get to learn, because it's all the time I'm learning about things we can do to make things better for the customer. That's one of my things. You see, we're now turning over 200 million pounds per annum, which is a big number for a little minicab company. But that, for me, just makes it harder to relate to smaller issues. But it's very important that we do examine the smaller issues, because we've got to get back to the basics of what it is we do. We supply a service, and that service must be top-notch and turn up on time with the driver and the vehicle looking good. That sometimes is harder as you grow. But for me, I don't have a secretary. People say to me, the size of your business. I don't have a PA, I don't have a secretary. If you phone, and please don't all phone at once, but if you phone Addison Lee and ask for John Griffin, they're not allowed to ask you who's calling. They're not allowed to say anything to you except transfer the call to my extension. I'll get the voicemail, or I'll answer the phone if I'm sitting at my desk. I'm not frightened of phone calls. It's my job. I work for the company. It's everybody's job. No one's allowed to be introduced. You see, the fact of the matter is, if you think about it, if you make a phone call and the person's in a meeting, there's a piece of you that thinks, you know what, it's because it's me. They're not speaking to me because it's me. They're avoiding me. Now, if no one announces who you are, you could have been my mother or my accountant or anybody. I'm just not available. You can live with that. So I think to myself, why should I know who's calling? What benefits it to me that it's you? You'll talk to me as you will about what's happening. And I do feel that's a culture in business that I would like to change. I'd like to see more and more people just answering their phones, doing their job. They're paid for by the company. And that's my position. I'm an employee. I perform a certain role, but that has to complement other people. All the staff are important. And the chain is as strong as the weakest link. So we have to look at any weaknesses and we have to try and repair them and change them and make it strong. It isn't just about me.
Interesting, because Sir Martin Sorrell, very similar to this from WPP, who also answers his own emails. He insists that he wants to be on the front line of customers, prospects, whoever is emailing him, he wants to be on the front line. He doesn't believe in the filtering. So
the emails are great. I mean, I've got mine, all my work emails go to my home. So it's just keeping tabs of what's going on, keeping your finger on the pulse. And the more people surround themselves with secretaries and PAs, the less qualified they are. It's a buffer for them. They're hiding behind all this crap. And really, they don't want to be out front exposed. They don't want to sit next to the telephonist and show them what they can do. I like to show them I'm good. I can do it. And, you know, I'm not just a cardboard replica. I'm somebody who can do his job. And I like them to see that. And I like them to think, you know what? He stepped in, he dealt with it, and it was interesting to hear how he dealt with it. That's how I started out. You know, when I first started out, when I first went into a minicab firm, there were 6 telephonists, 3 at one side of the desk and 3 at the other. And this chap was the manager. And after 2 weeks, I went over to him, picked him up, walked him back to my chair, sat him down, walked back to his chair, sat in his chair, and said to him, new manager. Self-promotion. I was the new manager. And when the directors came in, they said, what happened here? I said, we've just got a new manager. I joined in September, and by February, I was a director. I was like the white tornado, unstoppable.
But you know what, John, is that because I saw an interview with you on Smarter, I think it was, and where somebody asked you about something about competitions, like where's the next step for Addison Lee, and you said sort of the black cabs potentially they can see you in the wing mirror, lights flashing. You've got a drive, haven't you? A competitive spirit. Do you think?
Oh yeah, I think that it's exciting to be part of a thriving business. I mean, you think about it. In the last 2 years now, we have taken on 800 new people in a recession. 800 people have found gainful employment through Addison Lee in that period. And it's a very, very impressive number. Part of the joy is getting people to, it is the whole spiritual act of getting a job. It is so important to people. It's a lonely world out there if you haven't got a job. And the dignity of employment is a wonderful thing to own. And that's one of our challenges, if you like. I think we've got a lot of potential to do that. I think what we're doing... See, one of the things that, as we go forward, will happen is that people will not want to stand on the street corner waving for a taxi. You know, in an ideal world, that works. In the real world, there's no taxis because it's raining or because it's rush hour. So now you're thinking to yourself, I'm standing on the street corner. Now, the alternative is you sit in your office, you phone Addison Lee, they tell you they're outside. You come down, and you're gone. Now, that's unbeatable. Whatever anybody says, if we get that right, that's unbeatable. Londoners will like that. If we're slightly cheaper, and if we're on time, and if we care about what we're doing, we'll prevail. And we're growing fast. And more people have come to the conclusion that perhaps this is something I should examine for myself. We now have an iPhone app. The iPhone app is like a minor miracle. You just sit in a restaurant, you press 2 buttons, the app will actually tell you where you are. So if you don't know the road the restaurant's in, if you don't know the district, if you know nothing, then you just find my location, and it finds where you are and tells you where you are. So you just press, okay, that's where I am, pick me up there and take me to where I want to go, which is your choice. But if you've already been to that place you're going to, that will be amongst the list of options that you'll have in front of you. You'll just press a button. So within about 20 seconds, you've made a booking. Now, when you consider the alternative is to stand on a street corner in the rain and pray, right, that is not going to happen. So the model is a winning model. Now, to back it up, it isn't just something that can happen without any backup. The backup is the enormous amount of money we've spent on the IT preparation. We have a fantastic package. We've got 15 programmers working full-time for Addison Lee in Russia in a place called Samara. Samara is where the Sputniks and all the space initiatives that Russia had started from. It's a very, very IT town. So we have another 8 people in London coordinating with them. So the Russians come over, they do a lot of the media work, if you like. But in any given day, there's 23 people who sit down writing programs to improve the efficiency of Addison Lee. So it's a big number, it's millions. But the payback is that if we're getting it right and we're moving towards, I'm not saying we're there, I think we're about 99.5% of all our vehicles arrive on time. But that's an unacceptable figure if it's 0.5. We just want to get everybody on time. But it's managing that. But we're optimistic that it's going to happen. It just happens. You see, people talk about the black taxi and the minicab and all that stuff. The truth of the matter is that the black taxi driver is a fine fellow. I have no quarrel with him. We're competitors. I'm sure that people in Pepsi Cola are quite happy with Coca-Cola, just so they're competitors. Competition is good. The public can only gain from it. And the truth of the matter is we're not seeking to do them down but they are really an icon that we have ambitions of comparing ourselves to. We just want to stand next to them. We want to show that we can, offer serious competition to them. And, they're a pace setter. We're happy about that. But it doesn't mean to say that, we think bad of them. They're decent blokes. They've probably fallen behind on the personal service stakes. The flip-flops, the shorts and the T-shirt is not what's required in this age. You've got to take your customers a bit more seriously. Get out of your cab, be a bit more personable, be a bit more helpful, and letting people lug their case into the back of the cab. If you spot all that, you think, that is not taking us seriously. That's disrespectful to what we're doing. And if they want to ignore us, as you pointed out earlier, we're in their wing mirror and we're flashing because we might be overtaking them soon. But it helps. It helps to have a target. If you understand.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, of course it does. Yeah. Like a football team wants to win the cup.
Yeah.
They're an ambitious target for us.
Yeah. So I heard a metaphor the other day. It's like it's like riding a bicycle. If you're not going forward, you fall over. You've got to have something to aim for.
Correct.
Wouldn't want to be on the wrong side of John Griffin, seeing the fire in your eyes. But it's interesting, a serious point that you made back then about sort of investing in the iPhone app and technology. A lot of CEOs can be a little bit sort of complacent. They've got the technology, they've got the web, but it seems like you're seriously pushing on some of your sustainable competitive advantages, including the service from the drivers that is unprecedented, but also new progressive things like technology in the iPhone app. So investing in technology, you think that's something that all companies need to take a very proactive approach on? Oh,
I do. I do believe. I mean, technology is a train. If you're not on it, you're going nowhere. It is a very important train to be on. And the whole of the business community needs to take a long, hard look at all the IT options within their own industries. It's just a magical piece. It's just amazing. When you phone up Addison Lee, no human being takes part of that booking. All that happens is it goes to the computer finds the driver, gives the information to the driver, sends it to the account customer, sends it to the driver's account, then puts into the sat-nav, gives the directions to the driver where to go from this point to pick the passenger up. And when he gets there, he presses another button and it shows them where to go with the passenger. Right? Now, it doesn't mean to say that that's a Bible, but it's a great help. we do encourage the drivers that we have a knowledge school. We want to improve their knowledge. We don't want them to be dependent on the sat-nav. But the sat-nav is becoming more sophisticated, and it is in itself improving each year by leaps and bounds, because, you know, it's a big industry now. So that in its time will embrace traffic information, and it will have all sorts of ways of avoiding roadworks and other things. But in itself, you know, as we're speaking, maybe 3 years ago, I would say the sat-nav was unacceptably poor. It's now okay. Its next move now is to be very good. And that would be a great benefit to us, because that's obviously one of the linchpins in what the service we offer. But basically, we have a sign in the car to saying that if you have a preferred route, please let the driver know. I notice now that black taxis have it in there, you know, because it is something that I am generally going to somewhere I know. You know, I'm generally going to my home or my office, and I have preferred routes, and I might teach you something. And I tell the driver, listen, let the passenger rule, because if the passenger gets it wrong, it's okay, because it's not your fault. But if he gets it right, you'll learn from him, and you think, you know what, I like that route, that was clever. And we've all got clever routes, you know, for our home or our office or our family. So, you know, it's all part of the equation. Let people have their say, let people have their input. You know, if they want to, let them. It can do no harm.
It's interesting, as I'm hearing you speak, it's almost like you're American, in the sense that you've got an absolute passion about service. You know, what can we do better for the customers? It's almost, I'm hearing echoes of Richard Branson as well. It's all about sort of making sure that this experience of our customers, be it technology, explaining to the driver.
It's not difficult. You know, I eat out, as you know. Now, I've said to waiters before, I said, how's the ceiling? Okay, I saw you checking out earlier. How's the floor? Is it looking good? Okay, so in between those two areas, there's me. Now, have a look at me, because I'm here and I want service. And it is a wind-up. When you go into a restaurant, next time you go in, just having these people looking around, you know? And instead of you see every now and again a waiter who actually knows what he's doing and actually casts his eye line across the people. And has a look. Because, you know, all you really need to do in a restaurant, in a good restaurant, is just go like that. That means you want something. You don't have to shake or click your fingers, jump up and down. You just have to move your head slightly. Good restaurants will come to you just like magic. And it defies belief how anybody can run a business based on customer service when they're looking at ceilings and floors. And it's management. It's training and management. That's the important part. It isn't about, I mean, if I look at things that are wrong with Addison Lee, I look at me. It's my fault. It's my fault. I don't try and delegate blame. It's not what I do. It's my fault. I didn't spot it. I should have spotted it. As big and as complex as we are, it's still my fault. I've got to get busy, know where to look, and that if I don't do that, things can get lax, and it's my job to make sure they don't. So it is something that if you grow a business, you do get a knack for knowing where to look. You get vibes for things that are not right, not wrong. You know, you do. And sometimes, if people are a bit reticent about speaking to you, it's either because they're shy or because they've got something to hide. I always look at that, and I'm always concerned about people who don't like to talk to me or be in my company or be in the office, and I can see them, you know. Some of them go out for a fag, and you can see when they come back in there, they go, it's not, hello, Mr. Griffin, it's, hold on, I've just been out for a fag. And it's body language. And that is true of a great deal of the detail of business. And, you know, sometimes I worry about people that have this attitude. What is it that's troubling him or her?
Interesting. Well, talking about people, recruitment, it leads into recruitment quite nicely, because I imagine you're recruiting drivers, you're recruiting people, but for you to replicate and for you to scale up as you have done, I mean, we've got John Griffin, but it sounds like other people in your organisation and the drivers have got to live your DNA and your philosophy. So I genuinely have been, I'm an Addison Lee account holder, and I have had many journeys with Addison Lee, and I can honestly hand on heart say I haven't had a bad experience. On the opposite, only good experiences. And so it's almost like, you know, you've got one car in your company that comes to collect you, because there's so much effort on the driver being courteous, the car being clean. But how do you manage to scale that up so that if I've got somebody down the road, they're going to have the same experience as somebody.
You do. Well, there's a big training issue. We have a training school. That's something we do. That's part of it. I think, to be honest with you, I think that pride in what they're doing is what we try and give them. We want people to be proud to work. In the old days, they were a minicab driver. It was just a minicab driver. They didn't treat the job as a career. They weren't really that interested. I'm doing it between jobs. I'm really a genius, but I'm actually minicab driving during this period of my life. And now today, it's a career path. Now today, it's a different. See, the people that are coming in today come in for the long term, and they say, this is what I'm doing, and I'm happy to be doing it. And those sort of people, they're easier to train, and they're easier to instruct. So you can teach these people, this works, right? Do it. And if it doesn't work, come and tell me. And what they've found out is that some of the stuff we do, which at the beginning they're a bit iffy about, after a while they think, you know what, this is working. This does work. It's ISOs. ISOs came into the business world, and most of us looked at them and thought they were a load of rubbish, health and safety rubbish. But the truth of the matter is that as you get deeper into it, you begin to think, you know what, this puts structure into the business, and it works. And it isn't just, something that we don't need. It is actually helpful. And so we've now gone down that path, of training people up and making them feel. We present their certificates and we have photographs taken. They take it home to their wives or their girlfriends. And it's all about self-esteem. Inside everybody there's talent and there's good things. But it's having the confidence that that is the case. And that sometimes, if you can do that to somebody, you'd be surprised. Once upon a time, when I was at school, I was in detention. Now, I have no idea why, but I was in detention most nights. However, this teacher said to me one night in detention, the teachers had a rota for looking after detention. They said, Griffin, every time I'm on, you're in detention. I said, I know, I can't work it out myself. And he said, let me tell you, he said, you've really now got to start changing whatever you're doing, it brings you every night, don't do it. Because one day you're going to be somebody. And I thought it had a punchline, like I was going to be a clown in a circus or something. No punchline, just that statement. And you know what? It actually resonated in my head that this bloke said that. It was just a bloke that I respected, and I knew he was serious. And it really, it carried me, if you understand. It really mattered to me. And years after that, he'd retired from teaching, and Addison Lee was successful. I decided to go and find him. So when I found him, he had MS in a wheelchair. So I brought him to my house, introduced him to my family, and showed him my swimming pool and all the bits. And it was a really big moment for him, the two of us. I thanked him and he thanked me, and it was just a great moment. But it is something that I think people sometimes underestimate themselves. It is something we tend to do, if you're not successful and there's this bloke with this big car and big house and big everything, you tend to think you're really not as good as you are. And it's very important to believe in yourself, because no one else is going to believe in you if you don't believe in yourself. But self-belief is a big deal. And I think that I try and encourage people when I talk to them to try and consider that they're as good as anyone. Start there and build on that, because people, through circumstances or whatever it might be, home life or other, they do feel less about themselves than they should. And that's something that, where I can do, that's what I do. If I can kind of get somebody and try and mould them a little bit and do for them what the teacher did for me. It's surprising how such a small thing can have such a big difference.
That's beautiful. That's a beautiful story. Because I think also it's a little bit like what you mentioned right at the beginning about sort of you decided you didn't want to cook, but you don't enjoy it. You're not that good at it. Yeah. Somebody found a talent in you, identified it, and has allowed you to sort of. It's almost like that's what leaders need to do, is to identify the talent and let that talent grow within that individual, and then they'll be loyal to you for life.
Yeah, I think business is a team thing. You do need these people around you, and it's being able to spot those people. I mean, we have people come in from all sides, from all backgrounds, and every now and again you can see somebody who's quite driven, quite ambitious, and focused. This person comes to work to go to work, And when you see that, you think to yourself, you know, they make all the signs that they're ambitious, they want to get on. And I think that's excellent. And I can read that in people, you know, and I want, you know, I've got a chap at the moment who we're just examining. By that I mean we're just keeping an eye on him because I think this boy's got real talent. He's never been in the business, but he has got that way about him. He cares about what he's doing. It's a big thing, you know, and I tend to concentrate on those people and to see if I can promote them, see, because good is good. That's how I see it. I don't think there's good at one thing and bad at another. I just think good people are good at it, are good at things, are good at everything, you know. And I just think people are no good are no good are no good. You know, whether it's because they're when it comes down to it, I can only do so much for them. But if at the end they don't want to play, this isn't their game, then I've got to move on. But there are people out there who really want to achieve. People like me, the white tornado. When I wanted it badly. And it was for my sons, and I wanted them to have a father to be proud of. That was my ambition. And I was driven by it. And I like to think that I empathise with people like that. They're the people that I look at and think, you know what, you're my man, you're my woman, you are the person that I was, let's go.
I love that. Where do you think, do you think that drive lies dormant in everybody? I mean, you come across some people that are living and breathing that drive, and the white tornado, as you say, other people that are just somewhat more lackadaisical. Do you think that somebody who's lost that drive, is that?
I think listen, I wasn't driven the whole time. You know, I wasn't this, you know, 16-year-old kid going out selling Matchboxes, you know. It wasn't like that with me. It really wasn't. Everyone's different. I just kicked off when my son was born. It just kicked it off for me. It just changed things for me. You know, prior to that, I'd been a DJ. I worked on the Italian Job in Turin, a film. I worked for the Beatles. I did all sorts of funny stuff. But I was enjoying my life, you know, I didn't take it seriously. And then I got married, and then 9 months later I had a son. And it just changed me. I just decided, you know what, I'm going to go down another route now. And it was just that I've been fairly ambitious. I always remember somebody saying to me that if you want to make money, work for yourself. And that, as simple as it is, you know, that's an important message. You know, because that's how you make money. But it's tougher, it's riskier, but in the end, it's the path to success. You've got to take it on your own, and on your own's a lonely game. But at the same time, you know, I would say that anybody with ambitions should give it a go once. Have a go. You'll learn a lot from it. But it might not be for everybody. Some people say, look, you know, there's a lot to it. All the wages, the pay as you earn, you know, all the stuff that they just don't want to get involved with. But really, you know, it is a fact that to make real money, you've got to do it yourself.
Yeah. Let's talk, because I'm going to talk about the whole philosophy towards money in a second, but just before we go into that, you, at the age of 16, you were struck by some illness that basically meant that you had to miss some time off school, end up without qualifications but in some ways, do you think those early years with you going and helping your father's business and help turn that around, were they important for you in terms of building the foundation for you? Did you learn any sort of warrior-style business lessons, you think, back then?
Well, not really. I mean, let's take the accountancy thing. Now, I got articled to an accountant's. Now, I got articled without any exams. And the reason I got it is I bluffed it. I bluffed it. I mean, who checked then? Who checks today? If you go for an interview tomorrow, are they really going to check up on all the detail you've offered? They look at you and they think, give him the job. You qualify, give him the job. People are too lazy to go down the extra mile. That's today. Now, if you go back all those years, no chance. So I just invented whatever qualifications I needed to go for what I wanted to do. And the reason I did it was because I was aware that everything was about accounts. Everything's about numbers. It's all a numbers game. And I thought I wasn't that great at numbers. I wasn't the biggest dummy in the room, but you know, it wasn't my preferred choice, but I just knew there was something there I had to go and investigate. So I became articled during that 2-year period, and in a way it was quite a good foundation because we did it all by hand and all the addition, all all the bank reconciliations, all had to be done. We'd be there till 9 o'clock at night looking for 10p, you know, but it was a great discipline. And it kind of gave me a bit of perspective on what profit means and how this whole thing works. I had a good grasp of that, you know, and I do think people need to have a good grasp of, you know, how much a profit you need to make and what the costs are. So I've always been a weekly person, you know, because I can never quite make the adjustment between 12 months, i.e. 48 weeks, and 52 weeks. We've dropped 4 weeks here, and I couldn't quite work that one out. So I just do week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. So that's how I do it. So if I say to you that we're 22% up this year and last year, because week 1 was January, we're now in week 20 odd, right? And so that is how I do my sums. But it's once I compare like with like, I'm getting the right message.
So I suppose that would your advice then be for anyone that's sort of, you know, thinking about setting up their own business to actually spend a bit of time wherever they are, understanding accounts, because cash is king, cash keeps you in business, keeps your business running, to have some
What they need to do is they need to sit down and just write down all the expenses. And you just take the electricity bill and divide by 52. And you do that right the way down, all the ingredient parts, rent, rate, light, heat, stationery, advertising, just put it all the way down. And then see for yourself that Monday morning, this is what we've got to achieve. So you know these are your costs Monday morning. So by the end of that week, that's what you've got to have overcome. You've got to have made enough money to pay for that. And it's a very simple discipline. It's not complicated. Anyone can do it. You know, and sometimes, you know, people mystify the whole process. They make it, you know, if you look at the professions, like solicitors and accountants and people like that, you know, they're famous for mystifying the whole thing. You know, you can't do this because it's very complicated. But it's not complicated, and you can do it. And don't let it, you know, don't let it be a barrier to you, you know. And always remember, solicitors and accountants work for you. You don't work for them, right? If you don't pay them, they don't work for you. So it's a built-in service, like any other service. You know? So sometimes people say to me, my accountant says, you know, well, that's fine, but have you checked up on it? Do you have a point of view? Do you think it's best for you? You know, and where's his swimming pool in his Bentley? You know? So I tend to be, you know, slightly reticent about taking advice unless I'm happy with it. And I do think that, you know, the days of the accountant and solicitor being all dominant, right, are over. We're free-thinking people now. We'll let you know whether we agree with you.
So it's because Max Clifford, the guy we interviewed, the famous PR guy, as you know, he was saying the one thing that he believes, you've got to back your own judgment. And it goes to what you were saying earlier about having confidence in yourself.
You could build that up, you know. I mean, it doesn't happen overnight, but it is something that you could be aware of. You know, when I was young, coming from, you know, a very good family, I feel I had too much respect at times. Do you understand?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, and you can overdo respect. Where are you in this equation, if you understand? You know? You're looking up these people, but don't look up to them. They're fine, but don't look up to them. You know, they're okay, but, you know, look up to yourself and just say, you know what, I like him, he's good, but, you know, I'll be there. I'm on track. You know, and sometimes we do that, and I feel that I've been guilty of that, selling myself short, if you like. You know? And I think people do that, and I try and encourage them, you know, don't go there. Have some confidence. You know, there's nothing special about these people. They've just read a different book to you.
Yeah, so on an equal footing, some people have got greater strengths at the moment that you can model as well, but you've also got greater strengths than they have. There's no one...
Yeah, we all bring something to the table. Not, you know, it's not everything, but the mix requires lots of different ingredient parts, and most people have got a lot of those parts. Yeah. Most people have got what it takes, but they've got to, like when I came, after I'd done my, you know, youthfulness, I decided to take life seriously. I decided to be ambitious. Yeah. And it just, I clicked into it, and it just, you know, it worked for me because I wanted it. Love it. I wanted it. And it was a single-minded ambition. And I'm on track now because as it grows, I've had my sons in the business, which is every father's dream and a wonderful, wonderful moment for me. And that has given me so much encouragement. You know, I'm not living in a vacuum. I'm living in a family I've got 4 grandsons. And, you know, the whole thing is like a dynasty. My nephew works for me and my niece works for me. And it's almost a rite of passage that family members can come and work for Addison Lee and disappear or stay or whatever they do. Yeah, because it just makes it, you know, it makes it more worthwhile for me.
Well, I understand as well, there's not been a bad word said between you and your...
Never. No, never. I mean, I'm always aware that that is what people say. So I set out, we all set out, you know, we have an understanding that we'll never, ever do that. We had a meeting once and it got a bit heated. And I got up at the seat, I said, walked round to my son and gave him a big kiss. I said, son, always remember, we never argue. And I sat back down. All the people in the room were like this. What on earth happened there? Yeah. But it's just keeping us on track.
Excellent. I guess they know who's boss, though, right? Who's dad and who's boss?
Yeah, you know, but your dad's your dad. You know, listen, we'll look up to our dads, you know. I mean, it's the way of the world. I wouldn't disrespect my father. He was my dad. And, you know, and when things went wrong for him, I tried my best to help him. And I like to think that I made my contribution. But, you know, the special person in your life is your dad.
Very true. So can I just ask, if you, we were talking about there about sort of, you know, somebody should, if they've got the ambition, they should probably set off and they should give it a go if they've got the ambition. But then sort of one piece of advice for, I mean, you've been through it, you've built this phenomenal business. You know, just if you go and type in John Griffin into YouTube, you can see some of the phenomenal places you live. I mean, you've got great wealth. What one piece of advice would you give to entrepreneurs that are thinking about, yeah, I'm going to go and give that a go? What advice would you give them, sort of 1 or 2 top pieces?
Well, I'd advise them to do something they're interested in. Don't pick something you don't particularly like. We all have preferences, you know, to things that we like. It could be music, it could be literature, it could be building. You know, there's things in your life that interest you. I believe that people are successful, it's the easiest path to success if you enjoy what you're doing, whether it's painting, whether it's stamp collecting, whatever area you might say, you know, if you can make a career out of something you enjoy, you'll do well. If you go down a path of something that you think is going to make money, but you don't particularly enjoy it, yeah, it isn't going to happen. So it's very important. You've got to ask yourself, who am I? What turns me on? What do I think I can do best? What would I enjoy doing? You know? And you know, it isn't about making millions either. That, you know, a person who enjoys their work is a millionaire. I believe that, you know, because you can't, it's not for sale. And there are people out there who just enjoy what they do. And I look at them and I think, you know, well done to you. You know, I've met nurses and doctors and lawyers. They actually enjoy their work. And it is the first port of call. My nephew, I'll tell you a little story. My nephew worked for a building company. And in the building company, which was up in East Anglia, he one day asked to stay at my house because they had a contract in the Regent's Park Canal. He came to my house, I watched him work, I sat him down. One evening I said, Peter, you will never make money as a builder. It is not your thing. You're better off to stay in bed. Anyway, that's my advice. I said that. I'm glad I said it, and that's the end of the conversation. The next day, he came in and said, that's it, I packed up my job, which was a bit of a deep breath moment for me. Anyway, I thought I did say it. So then he asked me, what should he do next? So I thought for a couple of weeks. I said, look, relax for a couple of weeks, I'll come back to you. 2 weeks later, I said, right, now go and sell double glazing, door to door. Now, the reason I said that was he wasn't the best communicator, and I wanted to build up his communication skills, a very important ingredient in success. So he went out, sold double glazing. Some months later, I received a phone call from his boss. I introduced myself, and I said, how's he doing? He said, well, he's doing very well, and I'm thinking of putting him in charge of one of my shops. So I said, right. When he came home that night, I said, Peter, end of double glazing, you now work for me. So he came to work for Addison Lee. People said, who is he? What's he do? What's he know? He's never driven a minicab. He knows nothing about the business. I said, that's it. He's good at things, and good is good, which is one of my philosophies. So I left him to it. And then I went on holiday, and when I came back from holiday, we had a system, a telephone system, which was called a key and lamp system. And it used to be used by the police and the ambulance and people like that. But it was out of commission. In other words, it was no longer manufactured. So all I had the cupboards full of spare parts, but nobody could actually mend the phone. however many spare parts we had. When I came back from a holiday, the place was like a Christmas tree. Every bulb was lit up, everything was working perfectly. So I said, who did this? And they said, Peter. So I looked at Peter, who I've never ever seen any talent for electrics. So I got Peter into doing more of that type of work. And it coincided, this is about 17 or 18 years ago now, it coincided with us going down the computerized route, the IT route. So I got him to look into it for me. Today, Peter writes articles in all the magazines. He has his face on the cover of Computer Weekly. He's the man. And behind Addison Lee is Peter, who has, with us, you know, with all of us, but a team leader that's driven the whole IT thing. And just, you know, that's a bloke who's, you know, he's fulfilled his dream and he loves it. It's what he enjoys doing. Now, he's so good at it because he loves it. That's where, you know, that's where it comes from. So, and he's behind a great deal of the stuff that we're doing.
Do you think, John, sort of loving what you can just simply love the fact you're running a business or love being a CEO and a great leader, or do you think it's important also to love the product or the service that you're offering?
Yeah, I think that it's slightly more complicated than that. You're actually doing something. I mean, people talk about the community, and you could say it's a community-driven thing, but it isn't really. What you're really doing is just making it better, 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 you know, fractionally better. That's really what you're trying to do. And the way that is measured is by the number of drivers, by the number of bookings, by the amount of money you're making. All of these, a business in the end is measured by its profitability. Anybody can do numbers on a board, but the bottom line is how profitable you are. So, and it's the profit that allows you to employ more people, to get more contracts. And you know, it's an expensive business, but if you're making the money, you can invest in it. And it's important to invest. When the recession came, we had all our bills paid. We didn't owe anybody. We hadn't got any indulgences. You know, we weren't buying things for the fun of it. And because I started from nothing, it's always in the back of your mind that it could be nothing again. It's one of those thoughts. So just when you think you might go and buy a helicopter, you think, you know what I'll do? I'll buy a new program. I'll do another bit of software. And because it is there, you know, and I don't think that will ever leave me. However successful I become, there's always that bit of humble stuff that goes in the back of your mind and thinks, you know what, you're living the dream, but it could become a nightmare. So don't presume anything. Work hard. Keep the boat moving. Keep the show on the road. So I do have that. I'm not sure that, you know, if I was born into money, I'd be that person. I'd probably be, you know, having horses and helicopters. But the fact is that that was my upbringing. So I do like to see that we pay our bills, and I do like to see them making money.
Sounds like you've got a very interesting sort of philosophy to money, where you've got the abundance mentality, where you deserve good things because you're adding so much value. But on the flip side, you've got that other feeling of, well, we've come from nothing, that could happen again, so don't make stupid decisions. Very, very interesting. Talking about money for a second, I know a few people that got a sort of a subconscious feeling that having lots of money is, you know, is somehow evil, it's bad, or you've got to feel guilty about having so much money. And I think it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, potentially. Do you think money can buy happiness?
Listen, if you take relationships between couples, one of the main points of disagreement is financial. Whatever people say about that, and it's always about, you know, there's always publicity about these miserable people with money, you know, and it's almost like it's trying to say that you can't be happy with money. You know, it's a nonsense thing. You know, money's great. It's wonderful. And going to nice places, first class, is wonderful. And being able to go out and buy your wife a dress or a ring or a hat, it's wonderful. You know, don't anybody tell you otherwise. It's rubbish. The fact of the matter is that money is an ingredient part. It allows you to live a lifestyle that we all dream about. And I think it's good that people do achieve what I've achieved. It's good that people can see somebody, start from nothing, I can do that. And I've not got any secrets. You know, there's no ingredient in me that they haven't got. And I think that's encouraging. And the fact that I've got a Bentley and live in a big house, they should just say to themselves, look, you know, that's fine. If he can do it, I can do it. And when I first started out, one of the things I did, when I became super ambitious, I drove round an area in Rickmansworth which had these wonderful homes in it. And it was just house after house after house of just, you know, luxury. So I said to my wife at the time, one day I'll be living in one of those houses. They can't all be cleverer than me. They can't all work harder than me. Yes, most can. But the other few, I'll take them on at anything. So that was me building myself up. That was me telling myself that I can do this. And it was part of my own internal process of giving myself the confidence. As I've said earlier, building up me and saying, you can do it. And that was one of my thoughts, was to just go and look at these people and think that I can do this. But make no mistake, having money is wonderful, and having no money is not good. And however close your relationship is, in a marriage or in any situation, it's tricky when you've got big fat bills, and it's tricky. It can lead to, you know, dissent. It can, you know, it's not a happy moment. So I'm not knocking it, and I'm not, you know, I want to show people this is good stuff. Don't worry about the fact everybody says that it's miserable to have money. That's a rumour put about by people who have money. You know?
No, you're preaching to the converted. I totally, because if you've got something, you can give it away. If you wanted to give money to a friend in need, you've got the money to be able to do that. It feels good for you and also for them. I mean, I totally agree with you on the abundance mentality, and it's good stuff.
My sister had a bad experience. They lived in a mobile home. Her husband was a drinker. Blah 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 blah. Anyway, she lives in a nice place now, and I've paid for it. It's wonderful. She's great. Yeah. She's happy ever after. You know what I mean? And whatever you might say, you know, it was a pleasure to be able to do that. Yeah, and my sons now live in bigger houses than me, and that's a pleasure too. Yeah. So, you know, these are things that don't anybody ever tell you about that. You know, it's a complete nonsense.
Absolutely. What would you say are sort of the success habits? If you do that, it's going to increase your chances of...
Well, the thing is that I am a hard worker. You know, I mean, I'm from an Irish family, and Irish people can work, and whatever else you got, you can have the best idea in the world, but you've got to be able to, you know, to work. And I'm not talking about loads of hours now. One of the things when I started work was that you were almost afraid to go home because it kind of showed you weren't as ambitious as the next person who stayed behind. I've cut that out. I don't allow it anymore. I call them squatters, you know? Go home, get a life, you know? And it is something that I feel strongly about. I want quality, and I want quality for myself. So I can go to work, give quality, go to eat, completely shut off, that's it. And I don't stay awake at night, I don't do any of that stuff, you know? I just decompartmentalise myself. This is work, this isn't work. And you've got to be able to do that, otherwise you drive yourself mad. So really, it's the same with people that work with me. I want them to come to work, give quality, go home and play tennis, go to the pictures, go with their boyfriend, whatever turns them on. You know, you've got to have a balanced life. Work is not everything. It's a means to an end, but it's not the end itself. And sometimes people get carried away that I'm going to do 18 hours a day. You know? It isn't really what you need to do. You just need to stand back, give quality, and it works. So it's a mistake sometimes that I see people that are doing 20-hour days and stuff like that. I see people like Lord Grade is at his desk at 6:30, have a nice time, phone me about an hour and I'll get up, you know? It isn't what I do, and I just don't admire people who do that. No. Besotted by success, besotted by hours, and, you know, to me, you know, if it's a nice sunny day, you know, my friends have said to me that I've known for some years, you know, since your circumstances have changed, what is the thing above all that you value? Huh? It's a good question. I said, you know, the thing I value above all is when I wake up on that winter morning and there's snow and it's wind and it's raining, I can stay in bed. It's just a luxury. The fact I can do it. Somehow, that is the absolute luxury for me. That this is a moment I can now lie here and I don't have to get up. And somehow, having got up every morning early and worked and having to be there and having, you know, suddenly I don't have to. And that is a luxury. It's just simple as that. And, you know, everything else is okay, but that is great.
Yeah.
That for me.
It's kind of what Stephen Covey says in 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. You've got to sharpen the saw. You know, you've got to make sure you've got time for yourself for relaxation. If it's leaving work on the right time, you know, that type of thing.
Balance. It's balance. Everyone should have balance. You know, people drive themselves mad by overworking. It doesn't work. You know, it's like an overtrained runner. You know, there's a point at which you're in peak condition. That's what you want. Businessmen are very similar. You know, we're not supermen. You know, so we can only give so much. Once you start giving too much, you drain yourself. Especially in a 24-hour business, which we are, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. We're open Christmas Day. You know, you could drive yourself mad. You could have a quick death on this one.
Absolutely. Whilst you're at work, make sure you're doing quality work. And defining quality means getting on with the job, being urgent on your most important priorities?
Well, getting things done. You know, I mean, you know, it's people talk about multitasking, you know, but it's getting things done. Do that, do that, do that. If, you know, different people have different ways. I keep notes. Tick, 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 tick. These are things I need to do today. But I get it done, you know. And I see people sometimes struggling. They can't seem to complete tasks. You know, they just don't seem to do it and move on, do it and move on.
Finish on one task and then...
Yeah, so that's my particular way of handling it. Do it and move on.
The brand, whether it's on the side of your coaches, the cars, everything, when you're calling, is sort of very chic, very polished. Tell us about the success, about building the brand.
Well, brand building now is a big deal. I mean, at the time, you know, I was just trying to get the name popularised. It wasn't quite the same statement. It's now branding. Branding's big time. And it's quite interesting because I examined the advertising potential. You know, I examined the industry. I looked at what works and what doesn't work. What the conclusion I came to was that if you say to somebody, Addison Lee, now for the person who has no idea what that is, they just look for an explanation. It's a minicab home in London, over. Pigeonhole, done, lockbox, walk away. But if you don't tell them, if you just say Addison Lee, if you say no more, it sort of sloshes around in their brain. There's no pigeonhole for it, because they don't know. So when they do find out what Addison Lee is, it has twice the impact, 3 times the impact. And in fact, years ago, when I was trying to get the brand well known, I had an opportunity to do a number of adverts on the front of the Evening Standard, on the very front. And I had such a good deal going because they wouldn't put an advert in unless you paid for it. In other words, so people who hadn't paid by the day were pulled, and they had my artwork, and I was in for about 300 or 400 quid, and an advert at the time was about 2,000. So I was getting loads of ads. So what I did in the end was I cut the Addison Lee logo into 4 pieces. Now when you had to cut it into 4 pieces, the top left-hand piece has got hardly anything in it. And I put it on the front page. The next day I put the next piece, and the next piece, and the next piece. And I was at this golf club, and this chap came over to my table when I was having breakfast. And he had a massive company, a big clothes company, an empire. And I didn't actually know him. And he came across and he said, you John Griffin? I said, yeah. He said, explain to me about your advertising. Explain to me how you cut it into 4. You know, explain that. It's £2,000 a day. Little did he know that I wasn't paying that. However, I said to him, can I ask you a question? I said, you are a massive advertiser, massive, 1,000 times bigger than me. Can I ask you, has anybody walked over to your table and asked you about your advertising? Ever? He said, you know what? You're right. They never have. And I'm standing here talking to you about your advertising. I said, that's the point. That is exactly the point. That is where Addison Lee worked. I never told them a thing. I left it Addison Lee.
So yeah, so building the brand, that's absolutely a phenomenal way of insight. But it's interesting, on your website it says, now I'll quote, we are in many ways London's best kept secret, very little advertising and minimal publicity. So how have you achieved such a...
Well, we don't advertise. And I think the service that we provide is a word of mouth thing. If you take the best restaurants in London, they don't advertise, you know? And we live or die by the things people say about us to each other. So what's the point in advertising? You know, and it really, it doesn't work for us. You know, it really isn't relevant to what we're doing. So we do try and just, we're out there, and more people. I was a conservative Lib Dem, what they call themselves now, the Coalition. Yeah. Anyway, Nick Clegg was speaking at the dinner, and he was standing up, and as he looked down, I could see that his phone was flashing. So he looked down and he said, "Gentlemen, I have to go. My Addison Lee car is outside." Now, that's branding. Yeah. And that is where you hope to get to. You hope to become associated with people who know what they're doing and who know what's best and know where the best is. Yes. And that's really where we're trying to go. I mean, branding is important, yeah. But I think if you get it right, it follows.
Yeah. Did Nick Clegg know that you were in the room at the time?
He didn't at that time, but he knew afterwards. I thanked him. He thought, "What's that about?"
That's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, but the point of the issue is that this is what he should be doing. He should be using. He shouldn't have a car sitting outside, wasting your money and mine. He should be using a service, an on-demand service, which is the one we provide, costing the public minimal amounts, which is responsible. And he's cottoned onto it. Well done for him. But other people have got these limos sitting outside, and I'm thinking to myself, I couldn't have a limo sitting outside. I can do it for nothing, and I still won't have it, because I don't like people sitting around waiting for me. Have you eaten? Do you want to go to the toilet? Do you want to see your kids tonight? All that bothers me. I'm not that person. I can't have servants. That was not part of my world.
No, but that must have been worth quite a bit of money. Nick Clegg doing that. It's like Barack Obama when he went to Dublin. He drank a pint of Guinness.
Correct. Yeah.
A lot of advertising.
It does. Yeah. But when I go to the dinners now, it's quite surprising how many people that do. And Brian Ferry came to us, and he wanted to get the back page. He has got a new album out, and he's with Virgin Records. So he spoke to Virgin Records, and they wouldn't have it. Just wasn't in their plan, was their shout. So he came to us and said to us, "Look, I want to pay for it myself." So he paid for himself to be on the back page, and he thanked us for allowing him to pay £2,000 to be on the back page of the magazine that goes in the back of the car. You know that one? Yeah. So that, at that level, because we don't solicit advertising in the magazine. We don't advertise it, and sometimes we make money, mostly we don't. Yeah. But it's just a bit of self-indulgence, and if people want to advertise, they phone up. If we don't like the ad, we won't take it. Yeah. Things like that, there was kind of a luxury, but in their way, they work. And the magazine now, if people don't get it, they say, "Where is it? I haven't got my copy." That gradually we're winning over some supporters because we don't bundle it up with loads of advertising.
So, John, you've had phenomenal success here in London. A lot of CEOs and chairmen, they decide what they want to try and do is to replicate that success and scale it into other geographical markets. Others decide to sort of penetrate deeper and make it better and better and better. So which do you think it is for you?
Well, first of all, in London, there's over 40,000 minicab drivers. We have got 3,000. There's a big gap there. There's a lot of space for us to fill. There's 22,000 black taxis. They're doing a lot of the work that we would aspire to be doing in time. So it's a bigger market now than ever. And I just think that if I was to now go and separate myself, go up to Manchester or Paris, and why am I doing that? When I could be fulfilling my ambitions in London, looking after the people I understand in a place I love, and we're making money. So I really haven't got this burning ambition to go to foreign parts or northern towns and start sacrificing myself in some kind of a prison to show that I can do this elsewhere. It'll come. The software it is transportable. It can go to Paris and it can operate. But there's idiosyncrasies within Paris about the way they run the business, the way the licensing procedure is. Up north, you've got this demarcation lines. You can't pick up in one borough if you're in another borough. It's too messy. London's clean. London's alive and London's growing. And we have got so much unfulfilled business in London. This is our town. Down the line, maybe. Down the line, we're open to every suggestion. But in reality, I don't really think that we're going to go anywhere in the next 5 years except build our base in London, show how good we are or good we can be, and just bring a little bit of extra service to Londoners so they can have the choice, And we recognise that there's many choices out there. That some are cost-based and some are convenience-based. But, we want to be in the mix and we want to be a player. So that's where I want to be over the next 5 years. After that, we'll put our foot on the ball, look around the park, see what's the next move.
John, just in terms of, we've covered a lot during this program, and from personal success to branding to marketing. The number one habit of all great chief executives or chairmen and brands is they're continuously reinventing, like you're inventing technology, but they've got a sort of eye on the future. So, John, focusing on the future, what do you think, where will Addison Lee be in 5 years' time?
Well, because of the nature of the business, you can't just go from here to there. You have it's a gradual process. Work drivers. It's not an easy business to build, but we are now in a position where we can accelerate our growth. I think acquisitions come into that as well. We have an acquisition policy as well. So I think taking all those things into account, I'd probably say that we'll be twice our size at least in 5 years. I'd almost think that, because I like to be over-ambitious, I'd like to think we'd have 10,000 drivers in 5 years' time. It's achievable. The product deserves it. And that's something that, in the end, will be the limiting or the non-limiting factor, the quality of our service. And I do think, what I would like to do in that 5 years, I would like to sit down with the black taxi trade and say, gents, I want some competition. I want you to get your act together. I want us to work together, and then we can have a complimentary service, them picking up off the street, us taking the pre-bookings. I think it works. See, London is full of transport options. I've got my Oyster card. I'm a paid-up member of Boris's bike scheme. I use the services. It isn't just I don't take Addison Lee everywhere. I didn't take Addison Lee coming here. It's a variety of options, and all of them make up a tremendous options within London, a wonderful town to be in. And the transport options are fantastic. And it's just that, okay, we've raised our game. We used to be rubbish. 10 years ago, people wouldn't look at minicab. They'd just say, look, I'm not getting it. They were rubbish. Now we've got it a bit better. I think the taxi trade and us, we should respond to each other, talk to each other. I think there's nothing wrong with them. I think they do need a wake-up call. And I can give it to them. I'd like to sit down and give it to them. I don't want them to die. I want them to, to be there, and, so let the options vary. I use black taxis on a regular basis because it's convenient for me. If I'm in Regent Street, put my hand up, I can go on a short journey. It's the best form of transport, at this time. So I just look at all that, and I think that London needs these options. So 5 years' time, I think our ultimate goal will be 10,000 drivers. In that time, how confident am I we will achieve that? I'm pretty confident. It's quite an ambitious target, but everything's in place now. All our ducks are in a row. So it's just a question really of if people really examine what we're doing, and if they look at the cost of it and the excellence of it, I think that it will be all over. I see companies now, we're talking to companies from time to time that say we must look at the Addison Lee thing, what's all this about? And once they've had a good look at it, they think, you know what, why are we using any other form of service? And that really is beginning to happen. So it's an ambitious target, but I feel that it's doable. It's doable, and it'll keep me young.
You certainly are, sir. Well, John, I just want to say thank you very much, all the way from the beginnings of the business through to now. I'm sure that if I was going to back anybody, it would be you in terms of your vision and achieving that vision you have done so far. So long may it last. John, thank you very much for your time today, sir.
Thanks very much.